when it comes to the DCEU, I do think that portion is over. Do
Yeah,
I want it to be? Of course not, but it is.
Ricardo, some would argue it's been over for years. Way
Yeah.
before. We don't want to go down that road, but some
Yep.
would argue it's been over
Yeah.
for years
Yep.
before the Flash came up. But after the Flash, I think it's pretty evident. Hello, friends. I'm Anderson Marchak.
And I'm Ricardo Segura.
And we are the Panel Bros. Welcome to the panel.
Welcome to the panel.
Okay. Oh man.
Yeah, bro. We got juice tonight. I'll tell you that.
So as of this recording, it's late June 2023, and a movie by the name of The Flash was just released. And by the time this video goes up, it will have been 1 week since it came out. So we're going to give you guys a spoiler warning ahead of time. We're just going to be very spoiler heavy when it comes to The Flash, and very spoiler heavy when it comes to where things stand as far as the DC studios go and the direction we're going in. I spoke with Ricardo, and we agreed that we're not going to do too many of these. We love the DC property as a whole, but we don't want to overload you folks. So we're going to do one. We're going to try to do one episode every 3 months, every quarter.
Mhm.
So here we are with quarter 2 of DC
Quarter
Studios.
2,
Yeah, of
DC.
Studios. Yeah, quarter 2 of DC Studios. So
and like you said, it's a good time to do it because with Flash coming out, there were a lot of implications that this was going to have a significant impact on the future. And I think when we walked away from that movie, some of the writing was on the wall. So there's a lot to discuss about what we saw, how we feel about it, and where we think that this universe is going to go following the events of that film.
All right, so let's kick things off here. And we're going to jump right into the Superman Legacy casting news.
Yes.
Superman Legacy is going to be the first movie in James Gunn's DCU, and that's going to be scheduled for 2025 right now. And we have some names of front runners to play Clark and Lois. So we have Nicholas Hoult as far as Clark goes, and many of you may know him as Beast from X-Men First Class. He's been in a few things. Warm Bodies, Renfield. Yeah. What was the most recent one? Oh, The Menu. I enjoyed him in The
Menu.
Yeah.
Fantastic in The Menu.
He's probably the most well-known actor up for Clark Kent, Superman. We have David Cornuswet, and the one that I know him the most from is Pearl.
Same. So, as soon as they showed him, I was like, "Oh yeah, he's from Pearl." I remember.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have Tom Brittney, and I had to look this up. He's on a TV show called Grantchester, and then he was in a movie with Tom Hanks called Greyhound a few years ago. Okay. So those are the 3 front runners for Superman / Clark Kent. And then for Lois Lane, we have Emma Mackey. She was in Death on the Nile, and she also has the lead role in the TV show called Sex Education. We have Rachel Brosnahan, and she is from The Marvelous Miss Maisel. She's the lead, and that's a TV show. And then we have Phoebe Dynevor, and she is from Bridgerton, which is a TV show a lot of you folks enjoy. So with the exception of Nicholas Hoult, I would say most of these are virtual unknowns to general audiences.
100%. Pearl. Again, Pearl was the first time I had ever seen David. I'm not even entirely I'm not too familiar with Tom Brittney at all. But David, I do remember from Pearl. Nicholas Hoult has a long career. He's been doing this for a while. He's been recognized in a lot of different projects. He's got some range. I loved him in The Menu. It's interesting to see that he is being considered for Clark Superman, because when his name came up, I was like, oh, maybe he's being looked at for Lex Luthor. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, maybe, especially after seeing The Menu and just how twisted and how terrible he could be. I was like, maybe, but he's getting an opportunity for that. But yeah, I think that outside of Nicholas Hoult, I would agree with you 100% that these are relatively unknowns to a general audience. And I've always said, in my opinion, that when you're going to cast for a pretty significant comic book character, I prefer virtual unknowns. I think that's a great way to go.
I think Emma Mackey is most known for being a Margot Robbie lookalike, along with Samara Weaving. It's always
Yes.
Margot Robbie, Samara Weaving, and Emma Mackey. You see the pictures lined up, and you know, no disrespect to the work that she's done, and so it's an interesting list. I did want to add, I think it's rumored that if Holt doesn't get Superman, that he might get Lex. I believe that's, well, it was rumored he was up for both roles. So
Yeah, I like, again, when I saw his name, I immediately thought Lex, and then they were like,
yeah.
"Oh, he's actually gonna do screen tests for Superman," and I was like, "Really?" You know, especially like because we can't help when we think of these larger than life characters that they have a certain look to them, and I never would picture Nicholas Holt, with the black hair and the curl, if they do the curl, and wearing the blue suit and red boots. It's like I never saw, but hey, he could surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, he was in, well, we know he's no stranger to action films because he was in Mad Max Fury Road, and
Awesome in that movie.
yeah, he was great in that
Awesome.
movie. That movie was
Fan-
great too.
oh,
Yeah, we're gonna do a breakdown of that movie one of these days. That was a great
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
So, um, I did see that the fans, they're rooting for David Cornuswet to be
Yes.
Superman, and then Emma Mackey. Emma Mackey's had a following for some time now due to her TV
Mhm.
show, but people have just been rooting for her for quite some time now. So they really want to see her as Lois. So I'll be honest with you, like you, I'm not really familiar with these, besides Holt, with the work of these actors. So I
Yeah.
can't really, judge anything. I'm just going based upon look and the minimal I've seen. Of course, Corner Sweat, we saw him in Pearl, and he was decent in the role.
Mhm.
Um, I remember Mackie from Death on the Nile, and I thought she was awesome in that movie. So, somewhat, I mean, she might have had the best performance in that movie, one of the best performances in that
Oh
movie.
yeah.
So, she was great. Um, I mean, I don't hate the idea of casting a virtual unknown as Superman. It's happened so many times before. Obviously, I'd be happy for Nicholas Holt if he got it because he's worked so hard over the years.
I would be elated for him because you and I know, and maybe people don't know, but he read for the Batman,
Yeah.
and he didn't get it. And I think it'd be super ironic if that he got the other half of World's Finest by, oh, I didn't get Batman, but I got Superman, and it'd be pretty ironic if he got it.
Yeah, that would be really cool. So any thoughts on this short list here? I mean, do you think Gunn is going the correct route with picking almost virtual unknowns? Because there's not like a built-in, thought process with actors that we know when they go for
Mhm.
roles.
Yeah, I prefer relatively unknowns. I have seen online, as you have mentioned, that David has he's being pulled for the most. I've seen David.
Yeah.
People are sharing clips from him from different projects and films and whatnot, and showing him in different scenes and kind of saying, "Hey, look, he looks like a perfect Clark in this scene, or he carries the Superman feeling in this scene." Like, people are really rooting for him, and I would say aesthetically, looking at the three, David probably has the most Superman looking appeal. Like, he looks like he could be he looks like he could be a younger version of Henry Cavill. And it's interesting because Henry Cavill doesn't look like an old man. Henry Cavill ages like fine wine, my man. Henry Cavill is a great looking dude, and he's a great Superman. And this, David Cornersweat looks like a younger version of him. Again, I'm not too familiar with Tom as well, but aesthetically it's interesting because then you have these two who seem to have more of the facial look of Superman, and then Nicholas Holt. Nicholas Holt is in that mix, and again, it's different because he doesn't necessarily give off that vibe to me, but he's a terrific actor. So if he could be given the opportunity, he could surprise a lot of people by just embodying the character like that. So I do think that James is going the right route with going relatively unknown and then casting a possible casting of a known actor, because again, Nicholas Holt has been around. He's been around. I'd be sure that if you put a picture of Nicholas Holt to even casual audiences, they might not know him by name, but they
Right.
would recognize his face and say, "Oh,
Face.
I've seen that actor before," whether it's the X-Men films and whatnot. So I do think so. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Apparently online the screen tests are going well. We'll see. I would not be surprised if we get a casting announcement within the next few months. We'll go from there. But I do think, I think Relatively Unknowns is the way to go.
Yeah. And we have a long way to go, but Gunn has been really open with his process as far as Superman Legacy goes. Some say to a fault.
Yeah.
And some folks are saying, hey, just hold off until everything's all good to go. But
Yeah.
he wants to keep everybody updated. And to his credit, I would say, I mean, his job's on the line here.
Yeah.
He's I don't think his job along with Saffron would be in jeopardy as far as heading things up, but he's putting his name to the first movie in his DCU and he
Yeah.
wants it to succeed. So he's being open and we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah,
Gunn
I'm sorry, there's definitely
You're
some
fine.
times where like you mentioned, like I'm like, oh man, to a fault. Like there's definitely some times where I'm like, hey man,
Yeah.
like just pull back a little bit. Like let's talk about these other projects that you got coming out beforehand. But like you said, James is putting a lot on his shoulders by making this the first movie of the DCU and him writing the script and directing the film. And I think that James is trying to keep as much chatter going. He wants people to keep talking and keep the hype up and know that they are working on it, because again, it's a big deal. We're talking about Superman, one of the most recognizable characters of all time, and he wants people to be along for the ride. And when he talks to them, almost every day on that app, on Twitter, just talking about the process and where they're going and what they're doing and whatnot. So to a fault, yes, sometimes I want him to pull back, but I agree with you. I think that he understands the immense amount of pressure that he's under to make this work, and he just wants to seem as open as he possibly can with the fans. That's what it feels like. It feels like he wants to be as open as possible, take them every step of the way, because it almost makes fans feel like they're a part of the process, even though they're not, because they're along for every step of the way. Oh, he's looking at these actors. What do we think about those actors? I wouldn't be surprised if James Gunn is online reading tweets and seeing, what the perception is, what people are thinking about some of these character choices. It wasn't that long ago that he made a poll, said, hey, if we did Superman, would you like trunks or no trunks? Like, he gauges with the audience to kind of see. And he said he's not going to let that dictate what he decides, but it does show that he likes to keep his finger on the pulse a little bit and see what the population is thinking. So I think that's another reason why he's been very open about Superman Legacy.
Yeah, and he's still it's an interesting job because he's still trying to push the movies that are still on the slate. So he's speaking positively about the movies that are coming out after he was announced as the head
Mhm.
of DC Studios. Shazam: Fear of the Gods, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and Aquaman 2. He's still pushing these movies, even though they're not technically going to be a part of his DCU. Which brings us to our next point here about Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
The movie hasn't come out yet, but he stated that the character will be a part of his DCU. So this opens up a conversation because
Mhm.
technically none of these movies are a part of his DCU because Superman Legacy, he has stated, is the first thing. So when we spoke about this, I just had a guess. I said, well, maybe it'll just be the character and then the movie it will not be canon. That's just my
Yeah.
assumption.
That's my take as well. I had a feeling, because he said that the first DCU character is Blue Beetle,
Yeah.
but the first DCU movie will be Superman Legacy. So it's interesting for you to say that, because if Blue Beetle is going to be your very first DCU character, it's kind of odd for it not to be introduced as a DCU movie. So like you and we had many conversations, it felt like his way of saying, hey, like, that movie will exist, it will happen, but canon wise, I'm not going to take anything from that movie and feel obligated to keep certain things. There's going to be, if I want to make changes, I'm going to make changes. I would not be surprised, because Blue Beetle is it's an origin story. I would not be surprised if and how he decides to use Miguel and Blue Beetle in his DCU, we might get a Blue Beetle who's been around for 5 years in his timeline. he might say, hey, like when you first met Blue Beetle in that movie that came out in 2023, that's his origin story. There might be some things we're going to change. There might be some things that are different. And maybe he'll say like, oh, well, things are different because of the Flash movie and what, you know what I mean? Like he can do what he feels. He can do what he pleases. But yeah, I would not be surprised if after the movie's released and he does end up keeping Miguel and Blue Beetle, that there might be a lot of things that happen in that movie that just won't be canon to his version
Right.
of the universe.
Right. And let's just put it out there. Sholo might not get to come back. You know,
That's very true too.
it would be nice if he gets to come back, but you know, he might not. And more than likely, we're probably going to see him in the Booster Gold project. That's the assumption
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
always together, you know, but
I
you know,
I hope he stays. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Cobra Kai. It's one of my
yeah,
favorite shows. I was watching Cobra Kai when it was on YouTube Red, and you had to pay like $5 a month to watch it.
yeah, you were paying. Yeah.
I was big on it. I was like, I'll pay for it. It's Cobra Kai. And I remember when they were talking about casting for Blue Beetle, I was like, that's the guy. I was like, that's the guy. I said, I've been watching this guy for a few seasons of Cobra Kai. I think he's great. So when he got cast, I was very, very happy for him. So I hope he gets to do more than one film. I hope he gets to get a trilogy out of this. You know what I mean? For Sholo to continue. And if we can keep as many cast members from his movie, great. That'd be even better. But I think that James has made it very apparent that, you know, if you don't fit into his universe, he has no problem letting you go and just keeping the character.
Right. And spoiler alert, where there might be a cameo. We're not sure if it happens or not because we've been getting cameos now, and we will talk about the
Mhm.
Flash cameos, but it's been out for a while now. We got the Gal Gadot Wonder Woman cameo
Mhm.
in Shazam Fear of the Gods. Um, there is speculation we might see somebody else in Blue Beetle, possibly Ben Affleck's Batman. We're not sure. That's just
Yeah.
speculation. So,
Yeah.
I mean, to that point, maybe they were trying to push for more cameos after a certain point because at the time we had Henry Cavill show up at the end of Black Adam,
Mhm.
and then you know we had Wonder Woman show up, you know, towards the end of Fear of the Gods, and now the Flash, which we will get to, had a bunch of cameos. So maybe we might be looking at a bunch of cameos from here on out. We don't know yet. It's only 2 movies.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's up in the air. It seems like it seems like their primary focus is they wanted movies to feel like standalone while still acknowledging that these other heroes exist. So they decided to work with cameos, where instead of other movies like the MCU, for example, each movie felt like a stepping stone to the next movie, you know, and often to a fault with me. Whereas like, oh man, this movie doesn't feel like it contained. It's just we're leading and leading and leading. And with DC, it felt like they weren't really trying to do that. They didn't want the stories to affect other directors and other stories. So they were like, hey, what we're going to do is we'll let you make your movie, but we got to try to fit a cameo in there so we can still acknowledge that, you know, Wonder Woman exists in this universe. Batman exists in this universe. We want people to see that. And like you said, there are tons of cameos in The Flash. And who knows, you know, moving forward, like who knows if there's any cameos in Blue Beetle that stay, you know, they could hit the cutting room floor. They could decide to even shoot something really small and say, hey, let's put this in there now. You know, it could be something as tiny as them watching a news report with a cameo. You know, maybe Ben Affleck's Batman appears on a news report and whatnot. You know, time will tell because it's a very confusing time for DC.
we got an announcement that Andy Muschietti was going to be directing Batman Brave and the Bold. And the timing of this announcement was odd because
Very.
it coincided with the Flash opening weekend, the
Yep.
movie that he just released for Warner Brothers.
Yep.
And happy for him that
Yeah.
he's getting
Love Andy.
that he's getting
I
this.
love Andy. Yes.
We enjoyed it chapter 1 and it chapter 2, and it's really cool that he would get another job. But there's a little bit of confusion here that wouldn't you want to say, well, he's getting a Flash sequel or
Yeah.
something else dealing with this DCU that's kind of related, maybe? I don't know, but we're just going straight towards just the soft reboot as it's being called, and
Mhm.
a completely different character. And it was just an odd I don't want to say the announcement was odd, because if you do well in your job, you're going to get offered another job.
Mm-hmm.
He he probably did a good job with directing, with managing his cast, with being a team player for Warner Brothers and DC
Mm-hmm.
Studios. And you know what? That's going to get you another job, more than
Yeah.
likely.
Yeah.
And that's really cool that he's getting another job. The timing of the announcement is odd, because they announced it the same opening weekend as Flash. We could have waited a little bit for this announcement, especially since we don't even have a release date for this movie. Not yet,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because we have seen this before, and not the announcement timing, but we have seen directors work on a project and within the same cinematic universe get future projects that are a little bit different. We've seen it with the Russos, who went from the Captain America franchise, who went into the Avengers franchise. We've seen it. That one made a little bit more logistical sense to me because, again, Winter Soldier is one of my favorite MCU movies. It's one of my favorite comic movies, period. And they did such a good job, and they continue to do well. So that way they were like, hey, you guys did really, really well. How do you feel about tackling these team up movies? You know what I mean? And they went for it. So it felt like a progression. It felt like, hey, you're doing the standalone movie. You got Captain America, these contained stories, if you will. Then we're gonna do, Civil War. We're gonna balance you with different characters, and then we're gonna move on from there. So it felt like it was climbing up the ladder. This one doesn't feel so much as if Andy was climbing the ladder, but instead pivoting to a different film. And it's interesting because, like you said, it was opening weekend. And instead of them focusing as much positive attention as they could to the Flash, maybe announcing, hey, like if Flash does well, guess what? We'll give you a sequel and Andy Muschietti will be back in the chair. Because if the movie does really well, and audiences, as far as I know, audiences reacted very well to it, based off of like Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is relatively high. So it seems that general audiences seem to enjoy the Flash overall. So I would assume that to keep those people happy is saying, hey, you like that, right? It was really cool. Andy Muschietti did a good job. Well, guess what? If it does well at the box office, if it succeeds financially, if you will, we'll continue with the Flash story and we'll bring Andy Muschietti back. And instead, it was, hey, this movie came out opening weekend. Well, guess what? Andy Muschietti will now be doing Batman Brave and the Bold, which is a completely different character, different story. We don't know the timeline. Like we know very little about it outside of the characters, and bringing Damian Wayne and Talia in and whatnot, and that's it. Like that's basically all we know. We have an older Batman, so it is interesting that they would announce that opening weekend. Like you said, I think that I assumed that they would have pushed as much positive word towards the Flash, keep that momentum going. And instead, it was very much like, hey, if you really love the Flash, well, guess what? He's going to do Batman Brave and the Bold. And maybe that was their mentality. Maybe they said, hey, like the Flash was done before the DCU. The Flash was planned before the DCU. Obviously, a lot of things changed when the DCU was announced. So maybe it was his way of saying, hey, if for whatever reason the events of Flash don't continue, maybe that was like his little wink to everybody, like, hey, well, don't worry, if those events don't continue, we're gonna keep Andy. Don't worry, we'll keep Andy and we'll let him go over. And again, like you, I loved It Chapter 1, It Chapter 2. He's probably got a lot of good faith with Warner Brothers after working on the Flash, because again, we all know Flash went through a lot of issues and he stuck it out. Never heard anything negative from Andy whatsoever when it came to making this film. So I think he got a lot of high praise behind the scenes, and he got offered the role. But like you said, I think opening weekend is a very interesting time to do that. Not like a few weeks would have sufficed. Maybe 6 weeks out. The Flash has been out for a long time. It's pulling numbers or whatnot, and you say, hey, by the way, Andy's gonna do Batman Brave and the Bold. But timing was very interesting.
As a Batman fan, I will say this: he had a lot to juggle. Muschietti
Mhm.
did with the
Yeah.
Flash, because there was a lot of characters, not the cameos, but just the leads. We
Mhm.
had two Flashes, a Supergirl,
Yes.
and a Batman. So
Yep.
several characters, and there's a lot to unpack with jumping straight to Damian Wayne. Let's get a little
Yes.
sweaty here, Ricardo.
Yes. Let's
So,
do it.
we've touched on this before, but the fact of the matter remains that if we go to according to the comic book lore, Damian Wayne is the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul.
Mhm.
And Talia al Ghul is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins. And in the timeline, by the time we get to Damien, there's already been at least 3 Robins three
Yeah.
main Robins. Dick Grayson, who goes on to become Nightwing,
Mhm.
Jason Todd, who dies and comes back as Red Hood, and
Mhm.
then, we have Robin, who he's had a few identities. I think Red Robin was like the newest identity. I don't know. But Tim Drake as
Mhm.
Robin 3, and then who also hangs out with the Teen Titans sometimes. Once all of that, those years of history, and then finally we have the biological son of Bruce Wayne show up.
Yep.
So that's a lot to unpack. Is Muschietti going to go into all that history with flashbacks, Gotham City?
It's a lot,
We
dude.
don't
It's a lot.
and I'm sure they're going to use the story as a foundation, but they're not going to go word for word and page for
Mm-mm.
page if you're trying to introduce it to general audiences. Like, as far as a move for general audiences, we're not even going to do any of that. We're just going to do Batman has a son and Talia al Ghul's his
Batman has
mom,
a son.
and that's
Yep.
it. Keep it as simple
And
as
that's it.
possible.
Yup.
Maybe.
Yeah, they might do that. They might do that. And again, we talked. I brought this up before. I brought this before, and I hope I don't sound petty whatsoever. But again, it's very interesting how our dynamic has shifted, because that's a lot of years of history we're just not going to get to see.
Yeah.
It's either going to be done in very quick exposition, or it's going to be done through flashbacks. But you're probably, if I had to make a guess, I'm gonna say, we're probably going to stick from anywhere from 2 hour to maybe 2 hour and 30 minute runtime. That's I'm just putting it out there. I'm just guessing that's where superhero movies seem to land nowadays, is that 2 hour mark to 2 hours and 30, right? Unless you're doing like a grand scale 3 hour plus. So I'm like, even in a movie that's around 2 hours and 30 minutes, like that's a lot of story. Again, we're talking about multiple Robins. We're talking about a past relationship with Tyler. We're talking about Damian Wayne. We're talking about a lot of introduction in one movie. And it's very interesting how, one of the biggest complaints that we used to hear back in the day for certain movies and certain directors was, we need more time to build up some of these stories so we understand as fans the history that led to these moments. And James Gunn is swinging probably harder than I've seen in a long time, where he's like, hey, we're giving you Batman Brave and the Bold, where you're just not getting any of that. Like, we're going right in. Again, an older Batman, which was an issue in the past, but we're doing it again. And this time he's got a son and a relationship with Talia. Well, what's that relationship like in this timeline? Like, are we going to get a look into that? How are we going to go about it? Our general audience is going to connect to Talia and Damien the way they could have if they had the history. Who knows? It doesn't seem to be an issue now, and I'm not trying to be petty about it, but I do find it rather interesting that at this point in the DC moving forward, it's no longer an issue to have that history build up, And again,
Right.
I have no issue with it. I want to make that
Right.
clear too. I don't have an issue with it. I can watch any movie with either 20 years of history mentioned through an exposition conversation, and I could be along for the ride, or you can make four movies building up to it. I'm good either way. If the story's good and everything is good in the movie, I am perfectly fine with it. But that demand for having that build up is no longer necessary, and I find that interesting, because we're gonna find out with Batman Brave and the Bold, when, like you said, we're talking about years and years of lineage in one movie. That's a lot.
Yeah, the fan base has been divided on Robin over the years. There's some people that
Mhm.
enjoy Robin and some people that don't. There's some
Yeah.
people that like some of the Robins and there's some people that don't like any of the Robins.
Yep.
But as far as recent history goes, Damien has actually been really popular with a lot of
Mhm.
people. So it's going to be kind of catering to those fans and then also to people that have no idea who this person is.
Yeah.
And I can see why he would choose this type of storyline, because Batman having a son, to somebody that doesn't know anything about this, that sounds pretty interesting.
It's new and it's fresh to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm a Robin guy. I've been a Robin guy ever since I was a kid. When my family would buy me Batman action figures, I'd always like, get me a Robin. Like, I want Robin. I've always been big Robin. I'm a big Dick Grayson fan, Nightwing. So there's a part of me that's like, oh man, we're not gonna get that history.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. I would have loved to have seen it. But like you said, for a lot of people, a lot of casual viewers, and a lot of Damien fans, it's exciting, it's fresh, it's different. We haven't had that dynamic in film. The last time he was with Talia was The Dark Knight Rises, and you don't find out she's Talia until the final act of the movie.
Right.
So you know what I mean? So like, to many people, it wasn't as satisfying, but now you're gonna get a whole movie of that. And Jason Todd wasn't nobody loved Jason Todd until he died. It wasn't
Right.
until he died and came back as Red Hood. I'll never forget, they allowed people to vote. What do you want to happen to Jason Todd? And people say, oh, just kill him. And they're like, really? Is
Right.
like, kill him. And then he's more popular than ever. So maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get some prequels down the line, maybe we'll get some
Right.
exploration on these characters, but for right now it seems Batman Brave and the Bold, and we don't know where in his timeline that's going to be. I'm going to take a wild guess and say the first movie will be Superman Legacy, and I will say Batman Brave and the Bold will at least be in the first 3 films.
That's a good guess, and it would make sense. He just announced the director, Muschietti, to do it. So
I'd say first 3 films.
so this is the point where most of you are probably listening for here. Spoiler alert for The Flash.
The Flash. Listen, y'all, we gonna talk some stuff.
We're going to talk about The Flash. It's not an official review, just our thoughts,
Yeah.
and just mostly where the direction of the DCU is going to go after this. And so this is your final warning. Spoilers on The Flash. So Andy Muschietti got this movie, and he did what he could as far as, working with the script that they gave him and the delays and such. And there was a lot of praise for this movie when it was doing test screenings and, for the audiences and such. And they went in a direction, Warner Brothers, in my opinion, where they felt like a lot of people would show up for this because they went straight for like nostalgia here by getting Michael Keaton to be the Batman in this movie, just based on Flashpoint. It wasn't all Flashpoint. It was just based on Flashpoint. There's Flashpoint elements.
Yes, it's got elements of Flashpoint, but for those that are aware of Flashpoint, it is very different overall. But there's a lot of key elements that are brought into the Flash that are reminiscent of Flashpoint that I would have loved to have seen.
Right.
A closer adaptation, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. And they did a lot of things to get people to come and see this movie. The main one was getting Michael Keaton to play Batman again, a 70-year-old man to reprise a role that he hasn't played in 30 years. And on top of that, they added a lot of cameos in this movie too.
Oh,
and
cameos.
Listen,
there are cameos in here where some people just don't even understand the cameos. That's how deep cut some of these are.
Right.
Where they're just like, who is that supposed to be? It's like, oh, you don't know. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to get to the reshot final scene. I think that's going to be something we can digest there. But there were so many. We have George Reeves from the Superman TV show. We have Adam West from the Batman show. We thought it was Teddy Sears from The Flash.
It looked a lot like him. I'll tell you that.
Him, but the actor said that wasn't me. I didn't come and do anything. And apparently it was a CGI AI type deal where they just they did a de-aging on somebody like a John Wesley Shipp, and it was supposed to be like a faceless actor playing Jay Garrick.
Yeah.
In that
they
moment,
AI'd it and just said, all right, there's a face. There you go.
Yeah. We had, let me back up here. We had Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman in the opening.
Yeah, she I didn't know if she was going to be in it, man. And there she is. She's in it. Yep, she's in it for a few minutes.
She was in it. We had Ben Affleck as Batman in the beginning, and he doesn't come back again, and we're going to get to that. We also had Alfred. Alfred was in it as well.
That was another one. I did not know Jeremy Irons was going to appear in this.
Yeah.
I had no idea, because I remember him talking about his experience on Justice League, and it wasn't too pleasant. And then he didn't have to come back for any additional photography for Zack Snyder's Justice League. So I thought he was done. I was like, all right, Jeremy's out. So for him to come back to, oh, there he is. Okay, that's a nice surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. And but we get to this point in the middle of the movie where he's traveling through the Speed Force, and you see all the timelines from the multiverse. And then that's where we get the George Reeves, we get Adam West, we get the faceless, the unknown actor, Jay Garrick. And then we see Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater as Superman and Supergirl. And then just when you think we can't get anything else,
They went even crazier.
Straight into left field. And
Yup.
there's a little movie. Let's get super sweaty right now.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this.
There's a Tim Burton movie that never got made called Superman Lives.
Yes.
And it was in production and it eventually got scrapped. But Nicolas Cage was going to play Superman.
Long hair Superman, Nicolas Cage at the height of his popularity in Hollywood.
Right. And the long hair was to mimic Superman in the 90s at the time because he had long hair after he came back from being dead. So there's test screenings everywhere. You can go on Google, YouTube, you can find it. And we see an action sequence from that fictional movie. Bro. So shout out to John Schnepp, who made a documentary, may he rest in peace, about this movie. That was pretty cool to see that after all these years.
It's so funny because again, I grew up watching Christopher Reeve Superman films and Richard Donner. They were what got me into Superman as a kid. And I felt a little indifferent watching Christopher Reeve as a CGI character up there. It was very uncanny valley, just very Black Mirror-esque. And I was just like, I feel I don't know how I feel about this. And surprisingly, Nicolas Cage was the one that like shocked me the most because again, that was a movie that never got made. So like it was that deep of a cut. And one of our buddies that went to go watch it with us, I remember asking him, "Are you aware of what that meant?" And he was like, "No, I had no idea what that was." And he was like, "Okay, well, we had to give him a little bit of an explanation." And it's crazy because he's fighting a giant spider, which is like part of the documentary. They talk about how like vital and important they wanted that scene to be. And it's like, well, why is he fighting a giant spider? He goes, I don't know. I just want to fight a giant spider. I'll put a giant spider in it. So it was very interesting to see the Nicolas Cage Superman. He was probably overjoyed to see it finally happen, even if it was CGI. But yeah, that one took me out. Like I remember, I think you started laughing, and we were just
laugh.
we were just like in shock, and we were just like, did they really did that? And there's a lot of deep cuts in the film, but that one was pretty sweaty.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, Barry apparently resets everything back to the way that it was supposed to be. He gets a call from Bruce Wayne, and then Bruce Wayne gets out the car, and it's not Ben Affleck, and it's not Michael Keaton. It's none other than George Clooney of Batman and Robin. He steps out of the car.
Another full out gut bust laugh moment.
Right.
Just like they got George. Didn't even shave, man. He has a beard. He has a nice beard. He's like
got that silver fox look going on.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was like, listen. And I think he said in an interview he came in only for a half a day. He came in 4 hours because of setting up lighting and everything else, and just did his lines and just called it a day. And I remember just being like, what? And then questions started going through my mind. Well, what does this mean? Right. George Clooney? No, George Clooney's not back, right? Like he would never sign on to do these films again. I was like, no. So like there was a lot of questions with that cameo.
And then we had the after credits scene with Jason Momoa as Aquaman. And that was where we are as far as all the cameos go. So despite all these cameos and despite the leads, it didn't perform as well as Warner Brothers had hoped, unfortunately.
It's having a hard time. It opening box office wise having a hard time. And I said this to you. I said I would not be surprised if this continues for this film, that we'll end up seeing it on streaming sooner rather than later, which is wild to me because we're talking about a Flash movie with a bunch of cameos and nostalgia, and the hype that they put around. They hyped this movie up big time. Again, we talked about it. What was that one thing they kept saying? They were like, oh, it's one of the best comic book films since The Dark Knight. Yeah. Like they did it again. And it was like, that's a lot of hype, man. And they had early screenings. They were trying to get the word of mouth. Everyone was saying how great it was. And like they put a lot of effort into push this movie. There's going to be surprises. We're releasing early screenings without the official ending. We don't want secrets leaked. So like there was a lot of mystique around this movie, hoping that would translate to box office ticket purchases and whatnot. And for whatever reason, it just didn't land that way.
Yeah. I will say this: I did like seeing uh, the actors from the DCEU
Mhm.
that we've seen before, from Batman v Superman and Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's always a pleasure
Mhm.
seeing those people. Ben
Yeah.
Affleck's Batman, Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, Jason Momoa's Aquaman. While I didn't enjoy his cameo, it was good to see him because it's a part of that built-in Justice League that we know of, and
Mhm.
um, and obviously Ezra Miller as the lead, uh, playing Barry. The cameos I could that's fine. They were
Yeah.
fine. They if you got it, you got it. If you didn't, Google is free. You
Yeah.
could look it
Yeah.
up and see who these
Yep.
people are. That was definitely for the fans. All those moments
Mhm.
y- that with those cameos. And um we get into we're not going to do it today, but there's a discussion about using AI to bring back people that have passed away.
Yeah.
People like George Reeves, Christopher Reeve, and Adam West. Those folks aren't with us anymore. So there's a discussion there as far as that goes. And you know, I think the main thing that we had talked about, and you know, trying to stay positive here. It's
We're yeah, be good. We're gonna be good. We're
Yeah,
gonna be
yeah,
good.
yeah, we are. Um, the ending that we talked about here, the George Clooney thing, we had found out that was one of 3 endings that were shot, according to
Yes.
many sources. Um,
Breaks my heart, the other ending.
yeah, absolutely. So
Ugh.
the original ending was Sasha Calle's
Mhm.
Supergirl was there, and then Michael Keaton's Batman was there. So apparently Barry found out that he fixed things, but not to the full extent because
Mhm.
Sasha Calle ended up coming back in, and then Michael Keaton ended up showing up again. And
Yeah.
the assumption is that this would have had like a domino effect where Sasha Calle was going to be Supergirl almost as like a well, we didn't know if it was going to be a replacement for Henry Cavill or just we would have Supergirl now in this universe,
Mhm.
you know? And then it was reported Michael Keaton was going to continue playing this role of an older Batman. He
Yeah.
was going to um, be in the Batgirl movie as a mentor to Leslie Grace's Batgirl. Apparently, he had a cameo at the end of Aquaman 2, which eventually became Ben Affleck's cameo, which we don't know if that's even going to be there anymore.
Yeah, we have no clue.
Yeah. And it seems like once Batgirl got canceled, maybe it seemed like they didn't want Keaton anymore. And there was a transition period before James Gunn came in that they started making all these changes.
Mhm.
And that was when they got Henry Cavill to come back as Superman at the end of Black Adam. He also ended up filming something for The Flash, and this was the second ending that they shot. So this one would have been, I believe it was Ezra Miller,
Mhm.
and then it was going to be Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman was there, and
Yep.
then Henry Cavill's Superman, and then I think Sasha Calle
Yeah.
and Keaton were there
And
as well.
Keaton.
They were
Yep.
still going to keep them no matter what.
Yep.
We don't know about the future, but as far as that ending goes, and then the after credits was going to be Ben Affleck's Batman Lost in the Multiverse.
Yep.
So
It was gonna be a callback to Batman v Superman
yeah,
with Ezra coming to Bruce saying, "Find us," and it was gonna be basically in reversal where Ben was gonna send a message from out there in the multiverse saying, "Ezra, you have to find me. I'm out here." And it's like these are completely different endings than what we saw. And it breaks my heart a little bit because I would have lost my mind
yeah,
watching Henry Cavill Superman next to Sasha Calle's Supergirl, and then Keaton's Batman, and then Gal, and you're like, okay, cool. A a slight change up
right,
to the lineup, and then the after credit would have confirmed, well, hey, guess what? Ben Affleck Batman is still around. He's just missing in the multiverse, which could have led to a sequel of them trying to find Ben Affleck in another universe. And that's not what we got. At all? That's not it. we got we got your boy George Clooney. That's what we got, and I
right.
love George, but that's what we got.
Many are so obviously those first two endings would have set up the future and
Mhm.
what would have come afterward. But not many are saying that this is just a one off. You know,
Yep.
more than likely this is a one off, and technically speaking, the Flash is serving as a soft reboot that we will see if this will have effects on the DC movies after this. We're looking at Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2, and then James Gunn's DCU. once that
Yes.
gets brought into place. You know, they're kind of using this as a multiverse event, I'm assuming, to, you know, to set up the new DCU. So, I mean, if you're not going to move forward with these actors,
Mhm.
then to me, I feel like that second ending, that would have been the one to go with, because
Yeah.
then it would have kind of been a goodbye to everybody.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to come back to it again, you could, because Ben's lost in the multiverse, and we have a world right now where Gal is around, and you know, Henry Cavill's Superman is around, and you know, Keaton is there, Sasha Kaye is there, and I'm assuming maybe the explanation is that they didn't want to show people that wouldn't come back again. That's
Yeah.
that's the explanation, but there's a chance none of these people might come back again, and we might not even see any of these people again
Yeah. That
in the
based
future.
based off when we found out that there were 3 endings that were shot, and there was actually another ending, that was shown to another audience, like, early on, and it was one of the 3. I'm not sure which one of the 3 it was shown. It just wasn't the George Clooney one. But based off the fact that there were 2 endings with Sasha and Keaton, and they chose the ending with neither of them, I was like, okay, this 100% feels like a one-off situation where this movie is going to kind of stay in its own bubble. So they say, hey, let's have fun with the one final gag, and we'll have George Clooney's Bruce Wayne show up. And it in their mind is like, it's not really going to matter because it's a one-off. Like, we're going to use it to reboot a lot of the universe, and it's explained in the movie multiple times about resetting universe, and even when you try to put it back, it won't be exactly the same.
Right.
There's still going to be slight differences. James Gunn had openly said that, you know, some things were going to change, but not everything. And that was kind of his way of telling us, like, hey, if there's going to be certain actors he wants to keep, he's going to be able to choose to do so. And if there's certain actors he doesn't want to continue to move on with and down with his DCU, he can use the Flash movie to say, hey, it kind of changed this going forward. But yeah, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit because I would have loved to have seen Henry and Gal and next to Sasha and Keaton, because if this was going to be a one-off, like you said, I think it would have been a really nice way to just say goodbye to those characters and see them standing together in a lineup. And you know, based off the trailers and the images that we've seen, again, I have nothing to support this outside of me just being that guy who's pausing trailers and looking at photos. And we do see the photos of behind the scenes of Sasha Kaje and Michael Keaton at the courthouse. So we have seen that. We've seen the photos. We know that exists. And based off of there's one trailer that is a Supergirl highlight. She's at the courthouse and she's outside, and you see the photographers and journalists behind her with phones and cameras. And she talks to Barry and she goes, "Are you ready?" And she has like a slight smirk. And
Mhm.
I feel like the end of the movie, of that ending, was going to be them like deciding like, yeah, we're a team now, you know what I mean, like we're a team, and it was going to end with them going off to stop a crime of some sorts. And I think it would have been really, really sweet to see that, like, if this was going to be the final time we see these characters in the final moments of the Flash movie, it's them working together as a unit to go do something. I thought that would have been really positive to see. But I think based on the ending that we got, I do think, like you said, it's a one-off. I do think that it's a goodbye to a lot of these characters, a lot of these actors that Snyder had brought on, which leads me into the Aquaman post-credit scene, where, as silly as it is, I had people tell me that scene was pointless.
Right.
And I was like, I don't think the scene is pointless. I think the context of the scene is a little pointless because it's just them, you know, having fun, and Aquaman's drunk and Barry's trying to explain the multiverse. But what I think what James was doing with that after credit scene was him letting the audience know that if any two were going to continue, if there's any two that are most likely going to move forward in the DCU, it's Ezra and Jason.
Right.
Those are the ones that he seems like they're the safest. And ironically, they were the only two that shot for James Gunn's Peacemaker. So maybe because he worked with them and had a good time with them, was like, you know what? If we move forward, I will keep you two, because Barry says a pretty significant line in the after credit sequence. Again, spoilers, is when he's telling him, hey, like, there's multiple Batman, you know, some look different, some look the same, but there's multiple. And Aquaman says, you know, but me. And Ezra goes, weirdly enough, in any universe where you exist, you are this. And it was kind of James Gunn saying like, yes, if we see Aquaman, he will always look like Jason. He will be Jason. Maybe he'll act a little differently, but it will be Jason. So I felt like that was the real reason for that after credits scene, was to kind of say that like if they move forward, if they might not, but if they move forward with any of these characters, Ezra and Jason seem to be the safest.
And here's the thing: if the Clooney ending's just supposed to be a wink and a one-off,
That's what it
because
felt like.
let's get a sweaty here, they can undo everything they did with just like a 5-minute sequence. Not even
Yep.
that. It could just be the next time we see all these heroes, or it could even be a different actor playing Barry, and could be like, yeah, I just came back from being in the Speed Force, and now everything changed again, and that's it. You know,
they can do whatever they want.
They're gonna find a way to quote unquote retcon all of these things, including, you know, Clooney showing up at the end. And if that's the case, then why not keep the ending that saw all the other actors?
Yeah.
If you were going to retcon it anyway, then just leave it at that. And then that'll be our goodbye to everybody, you know, because you're kind of doing the same thing by bringing Clooney back for a one-off. George Clooney is not coming back to play Batman. I'm just going to go on record as saying that I don't think George Clooney is coming back to playing Batman. And if we end up eating crow on this, then okay, I guess we end up eating crow.
Look,
but
I'll eat crow, but I told somebody, look, I told multiple people because they watched The Flash, and the first thing they said to me was, wow, I can't believe George Clooney's going to be back as the Batman. And I'm like, he's not. Like, there's no, man, I'd bet at least $5. I could do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I strongly believe George has gone on public record numerous times apologizing for the Batman films and has no interest. But again, for a wink and a gag, George was down. And that's why when I watched that ending, I was like, okay, that was a fun little wink. It is what it is. It's just meant to have fun and whatnot. And that'll be the end of it. But there are people that walked out thinking George was the new Batman. So again, you're still going to have that feeling. Like if you did let Henry and everyone else stay in it, if you're worried about people wondering, oh, well, then people are going to wonder why they're not back again. You already have people thinking George Clooney's the new Batman. And we know that's not going to happen. It's just not. James wants to, cast his own Batman for Batman Brave and the Bold, and that's his right to do so. It's not going to be George. It was a fun little gag. It was a wink to the audience. And again, if you're gonna wink to us, hey man, let's see Henry in there. Let's see Gal in there. Let's put them together one more time. We'll say bye.
Yeah, let that be our goodbye to them. And so this will transition us to something Kevin Smith recently said.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
Yeah. So Batgirl got canceled, and a lot of people were speculating that that was almost going to be like a Batman Beyond type situation, with Keaton in the older Batman mentor role. We've seen the screenshots. He's in the suit still, but he's mentoring Leslie Grace's Supergirl and
Batgirl.
Excuse me. See, I'm all over the place here. Thank you.
There's a lot of cameos, my boy. It's a lot.
So Batgirl, and you know, she might have been brought into that new Justice League if that had happened, you know, with Gal and Henry and all these other people. But obviously the movie got canceled. That ending got scrapped. We don't know if Keaton's coming back again. We have Kevin Smith talking to Michael Uslan's son, and this family is involved with, you know, DC movies and Warner Brothers. And apparently, had the Flash done well financially, there were discussions of doing a Batman Beyond movie out of nowhere with Keaton as Batman, and whether it was connected to this continuity or not. That's mind-blowing.
Absolutely mind-blowing. I feel like for years, many people have speculated, hey, and wanted and wished for, man, you know, it'd be really great if we ever got Michael Keaton again, if we did Batman Beyond. If we can get Terry McGinnis and do Batman Beyond, it'd be incredible. Now it does seem that they were going to lean more towards him doing a Batman Beyond with Batgirl. It seemed like that was the route that they were possibly going to take. But that is just a crazy revelation, and it's funny because now, like, I'm putting, all right, tinfoil hat, okay, tinfoil hat with me, all right. This conspiracy theory time. We know Flash is not doing well at the box office. If there was anything that's going to make people go, oh man, let's try to help the box office a little more, you tell people that if it does well, Michael Keaton will be back in a Batman Beyond movie, and maybe you'll get some more, maybe you'll get some more comic book fans to go out there and see it. Maybe. I'm not saying Kevin Smith is being dishonest. No, I think that was told to Kevin Smith, and I do think that there's a truth to it. I think there's truth to it because again, they brought Keaton in for Batgirl and they canceled it. And we could talk about Batgirl. Look, conspiracy theory again. I think that when they announced that, the reason they had canceled it was they said it felt too small for the big screen, but too big and too expensive for the small screen on streaming. And at face value, I was like, oh, okay, well, if that's the case, that stinks because everybody worked really hard on it. Are you guys sure you can't find a way to release it? And after everything that we're seeing now with the multiple reshoots for the Flash and because remember, for a while, you and I had heard that the plan at Warner Brothers was a new trinity with Supergirl, Batgirl, and Wonder Woman.
Yes.
That was something that we had heard. And it seemed like the steps were moving forward. But when the new management came in, it seemed like that was no longer on the table. And again, tinfoil hat me is thinking the reason Batgirl was canceled wasn't because of the reasons they said, but basically because they were going in a new direction.
Right.
And basically knowing like, hey, we're not going to continue in this direction. So why spend any more money, work on this movie if we're not going to make it canon in our new universe moving forward? If we're not going to keep Keaton, which is one of the primary draws of this movie, why would we keep going forward? You know what? He's in the Flash movie, but don't worry. The ending that he's in, we're getting rid of it. So he's not even in the ending of that movie. So like, it just seemed like it seemed like a lot of backpedaling. And this is what happens when you have different heads coming in and out. You had Walter Hamada, who was in for a while, and then he left, and then you got Zaslav, and then he's bringing James Gunn in. So there's a lot of chefs coming in, and they're trying to put their spin on things and make it work as best as possible. But I want to see the Batgirl film more than ever because I want to see what that storyline was going to be if they were, going to end up doing a Batman Beyond type thing with Michael Keaton. And it's so wild that, they say this now. Like, again, you would think that this would have been news prior to the Flash release. Like, hey, like we have plans for a Batman Beyond movie if this does well, but I don't know. Maybe it was something they talked about and then decided they weren't going to do it when James decided Batman Brave and the Bold. Who knows? There's a lot of balls in the air right now, and they're just all over the place.
Yeah, we really don't know where things are going to go. Gal recently said that she's apparently it was alluded to her coming back as Wonder Woman, and I think she said there's been discussions about possibly doing that in the future. She's been just really non-committal as far as being able to come back again. And on top of that, Sasha Kaye, she said that she's had discussions, and then once again, it doesn't sound like we'll see her again either. Everyone's having discussions, and it's like you walk into Warner Brothers to have a discussion, and they say, "Thanks, don't call us, we'll call you." I guess I don't know.
You ever see those mafia movies where they're like, "Hey, like come with me, we're gonna go have this meeting," and they take them into an empty room,
yeah,
and then that's what it feels like because
it's like a sit down, yeah.
They're like, "Oh, Henry, let's have this meeting," and I was really looking forward to everything happening with Henry Cavill. They had a project lined up. We read that in the Hollywood Reporter that a Man of Steel sequel was happening. They were working on it. He was in the Flash movie and all that got canned. So we know a lot of things can change at these meetings. And Gal had very specific words when she said she's an actor for hire. She can't wait to work on her own project. She no longer has to sit by the phone and just wait for things to happen. So it was very key wording. I felt like it was her way of saying, listen, if there's more Wonder Woman, I will absolutely do it. Right. But if there's not, I've got plenty to do. And I may be a little pessimistic here, maybe because of everything that's been happening over the last few years. And again, if I eat crow, I think Gal is done. Yeah. I think Wonder Woman is once the third script or the third story, I should say, was kind of like, hey, we're not going this direction. And Patty Jenkins had that meeting, and Patty Jenkins and James, went their separate ways. I was like, oh, that's a little interesting. I said, would Gal do it without Patty? And now with Gal's statements, and she's been working the game. She's been cameoing. She's been in Shazam 2. She's been in The Flash. Like, she's here to be Wonder Woman. I don't think Gal wants to walk away from the role.
No,
I do not think for a second she wants to walk away from the role whatsoever. But I think she sees the writing on the wall too. And instead of her just sitting around and doing nothing, she's like, hey, I'm going to go gonna go make movies. I'm gonna go make projects. I'm gonna go be back in the Fast and Furious franchise. I'm working deal with Netflix. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So it's gonna be exciting to see where she ends up and what she does. But the pessimistic side of me thinks that that Gal's Wonder Woman is finished, especially because James's next introduction into that world is a prequel without Diana,
Right, the
and
Amazons.
I
Yeah.
think that's his way of kind of shifting away from Gal, and I think that Sasha Kaje, and I loved her as Supergirl. I wish she was in the Flash more. I want to see more of her.
Yeah.
And I would love to see more. I would like to see her get to have more options with the character, but she's got a meeting coming up and my fingers are crossed for her. I would love to see her again, but
Right.
the pessimistic side of me thinks
Right.
that she won't be back.
Right, because Gunn has a movie, Superman, Supergirl, Woman of
Yes.
Tomorrow,
Yep.
and so more than likely it's going to be, his vision for Supergirl. He's probably not
Mm-hmm.
going to direct it, but he's going to be the leader of everything, and they're going to want their own Supergirl, not the girl that was cast
Yeah.
beforehand. Unfortunately, would it be cool to see her come back, but this time with the long blonde hair? How awesome would that be? Just a different look. And there were several aspects of Supergirl that were chosen for her look in the Flash. There was
Oh
a
yeah.
Supergirl in Injustice, and
Mm-hmm.
then also Sir El from another
Yeah.
continuity as well. So a different look for
Mm-hmm.
Supergirl, but it would be cool if she got cast again, and it's the multiverse. It's a different version of Supergirl, and then she could
Yeah.
actually have the long blonde hair, and we could be like, oh look, now I get to play this version. That would be really cool,
Yeah, I would love to see her again. And look, who's to say? Look, we're talking about multiverse.
Right.
I also wouldn't be surprised if Andy brings her into Brave and the Bold as a completely different character,
Yeah.
because he can
Yeah.
he can do that if he wants to bring Sasha on. Because look, if Andy's gonna do one thing, if Andy's gonna do it, and I love Andy for it, Andy's gonna bring Latino characters into these comic films. So when he made Supergirl Latina, I was like, okay, Andy, I see you, Papa. I see you. I'm
Right.
very happy about that. So I was like, listen, if James decides, hey, we're gonna go with a different direction, a different Supergirl,
Yeah.
it would be really cool if Andy gets an opportunity to bring her into Brave and the Bold as a completely different character. We're in the multiverse. We can do that. Because I really do like her. And if I remember correctly, I think I saw her promote the Flash more than anybody else. Like I
A
saw
lot of
Sasha
people were saying,
promoting this movie more than
right.
everybody else on the cast. Not saying that they didn't. I saw everyone for the most part promote it outside of Ezra, but Sasha was all over the place promoting this film. There was genuine joy and happiness whenever she talked about it. This was a big break for her, and I want to see amazing things for her. So hopefully we see her again.
Right. And that's just where we're at right now. We're just kind of like just not sure where things are going to go. I like I said, we're not going to review the Flash. I mean, long story short, I thought it was fine. It was
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
And that's been how it's been for a while now. It was fine.
yeah.
It was fine.
I think, I
Outside of
think,
outside of well, here we go. Outside of Matt Reeves the Batman
mhm,
and Todd Phillips the Joker, which are both Elseworld stories,
yes,
most things over the past 3 or 4 years have just been fine to me, you know?
yes. And it happens. It happens. I had a lot of fun with it, but there are parts of me that, again, that having known a lot of the key details of Flashpoint Paradox, I
Yeah.
really wish we would have gotten to see a lot of that, like Thomas Wayne Batman,
Yeah.
Martha Wayne Joker, working with Ray Fisher's Victor, a
Right.
cyborg. And come on, man, you mean to tell me we could have possibly seen Thomas Wayne write the letter to Bruce, and then
Yeah.
Bruce get the letter, and that tear, bro, that scene shatters me. I would have loved to have seen
Right.
that. That's a
Right, skinny Superman trapped with
yes,
the
like
red sun?
I would have loved to have seen this. It's a
Yeah.
Flashpoint Paradox is obviously, it would have been a much heavier film, and it definitely seems like they wanted to go very fun, lighthearted. And there were moments in the movie where I laughed. There were moments in the movie that I cried. So I had a lot of fun with it. Would I have been down to see like that other version? Absolutely. I would love to know what Rick's original script was. I
Right.
can't pronounce
If
his last name. I'm so sorry. Do you know how to?
yeah, I do actually.
I don't know how to pronounce it, and I don't want to butcher it. I feel so
Yeah.
bad.
Uh It's Rick Famuyiwa.
Famuyiwa. Okay.
Famuyiwa. Oh, see, now I'm messing up.
See, dude, yeah, I mess up.
Famuyiwa.
Listen.
Famuyiwa.
We apologize,
Yeah,
but I would be
he's the
very
director of Dope. So
yeah, he was the
yeah,
original director of the Flash. I'd be really curious to know what that was like, if that was going to be closer to the Flashpoint paradox that we're aware of. But again, this was a lot of fun. It was different than what I was expecting. When it needed to hit me, it hit me.
right.
And then there was other moments where I was like, oh, I wish we'd have done this, but hey, what can you do? But like you said, a lot of the stuff as of recent has been fine, right? And I think that has to do with a lot of the changes that are very last minute. We're all over the place. We're not really sure. It's an uncertain feeling. And that's weird, because over the last, oh god, it's been a long time since the cinematic universe has really started. A lot of things have been, about, knowing where we're going to go, which is why even the MCU is dealing with issues now with fans, because people feel like they're uncertain of where these stories are going. And I feel like the DCU is feeling that as well. Like right now, we as fans are not sure where things are going. And it's not just because of the movies themselves, but it's because of announcements. James Gunn dropping announcements before Shazam 2 was even released. He was like, hey guys, we're going to be doing this reboot, the soft reboot to the universe. So everyone's like, okay, what does that mean for Shazam 2? Like, does that mean is Shazam sticking around? Like, there's just a lot of uncertainty. But one thing that I'm quite possibly certain about is that you brought up the Elseworld movies. I think we're at a point in time now where fans, especially when it comes to DC, are going to cling more to the Elseworld movies, because they know they don't have to worry about this this I'll use Doctor Strange here, a multiverse of madness. They don't have to worry about all these weird spaghetti noodles overlapping one another. They don't have to worry about that. They're like, no. I'm going to go see the Batman by Matt Reeves, and I'm going to get a Batman story. I'm going to go see Joker 2, and now we're getting Harley Quinn with Lady Gaga. I'm going to go see that, and I think that the Elseworld movies quite possibly might be the movies that do better at the box office. Probably do better with casual fans, with diehard fans. I think we're looking at that time period now for DC, especially when they're trying so hard to make a cinematic universe, that it's actually going to be the Elseworld movies that are going to be the ones that are really, really financially successful, and things that anybody can just pick up, right? Like, there's no confusion about it. It's like, hey, where's Henry Cavill? I thought Henry Cavill was Superman. Who's this guy? Who's Nicholas Hoult? You don't have to deal with any of that. You're getting your Elseworld stories, and I hope they do more. I love the Elseworld stuff. Come on, bring Sasha Calle back and give me an Elseworld Supergirl movie. I'm fine with that. Give me Elseworld stuff. You know what I mean?
I wanted to give a shout out to the Flashpoint comic book. If you're a
Mhm.
comic reader, if you want to read a story, I would check that out. Highly recommend the Jay Oliva Flashpoint Paradox animated movie.
So
And
good.
if you have a chance to see that, then that's part of a big universe as well, but we're not going to get into that. If you just want to see that movie by itself and the
Mhm.
things that that touches on, please watch that and then share our sadness with realizing that we could have gotten something like that.
It we
You know,
we were so close. We were so close.
there's
Again,
and
I had a lot of fun with the Flash. I had a lot of fun with it.
y-
I said, but that, oh my god.
yeah, and it was reported that they wanted Thomas Wayne and that Jeffrey Dean Morgan was possibly in the running. Actually, no, they didn't say Thomas Wayne. They said Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in the running, and they hadn't said if it was going to be Thomas Wayne or whatever. But there was like an older Batman. That was the thing.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I don't know how they would have done that. Obviously, he would not have been in the Tim Burton costume. Probably not.
Yeah.
Once they found out they could get Keaton, then they went with the Tim Burton version, obviously.
It
But
was it was interesting, because even though Keaton was cast, when he was first cast, because the speculation that had got out that this was going to be lightly based on Flashpoint Paradox, I remember people questioning online. They're like, "What is Michael Keaton playing Thomas Wayne?" Because
right.
everyone associates Thomas Wayne Batman with Flashpoint Paradox. So I remember seeing online, and I was like, I don't think they would just get Jeffrey Dean Morgan to do that, because Jeffrey Dean has gone on public record numerous times that he loved working with Zach, and he's just waiting for the call to come back as Batman. Like, he knows about Flashpoint Paradox. He was ready to go. You're talking about Lauren Cohan as the female Joker.
Oh
Come on,
man,
like, we were there. We were there. We were
would
there. We
have
were so
lost
close.
it.
We were so close.
Well, I mean, we're just gonna watch Walking Dead, Dead City now. That's all.
Yeah,
To see
I'm gonna
them,
watch that. I'm
just so we
gonna
can
watch it
watch
because I
them,
want to see them. I
just so we
want to
can
see
see them
them.
as leads every single week. I guess that's the
Yep,
best.
yep.
That's the best we're gonna get. So
Yep. And before I forget, for those of you again that you had brought up, if you want to watch Justice League, the Flashpoint Paradox, it's on Max. It is
oh,
on
there we
Max,
go. Cool.
so you can watch it, it's stream it, and there it is. It's from 2013. It's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So we touched on this a few times about like, where we're gonna go.
Mhm.
So once again, it's just for me, I just see Blue Beetle as just being a solid origin story. I don't really think
Yeah.
there's gonna be too much universe stuff tying into it. We might get a cameo or two, and then the same thing for Aquaman. Just a nice story,
Mhm.
maybe a couple tie-ins. Like, why would they continue tying in things to the new DCU when it's all going to be just a refresh anyway?
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting that they ended the movie with Ezra and with Jason Momoa,
Mhm.
and it maybe that, like you said, it maybe that was their way of letting us know we'll see these two actors again
Yeah. If
because
like if I felt like because again anything can change. They could decide a month from now, like, you know what, no, we're not going to bring them back, or Jason, you're going to be Lobo now, how about that? You know what
right,
I mean?
we
Like
don't
a
know.
lot of things can change, but my biggest takeaway was the fact that that was the after credit scene. And it to many people like, oh, I just felt pointless. I was like, no, I think there's more context to it, we're just not seeing it right away, because at first I was like, what is this scene? But then I was like, wait a minute, because again, he's telling Arthur about the multiverse, how Batman looked different, but he was like, hey, you're you. Like in every universe that you exist, this is you. And it was just like, it's very interesting. So basically, we can go to other universes and get a different Aquaman, but they'll look like Jason. So I think it was their way of saying they're the safest. Again, nobody's safe. It's like The Walking Dead in here. That's the second thing for The Walking Dead. Nobody's safe, but it does feel like they are
Well,
currently the safest.
right, because we saw them at the end of Peacemaker. They were the only
Yup,
two actors who
the
we saw their
only
faces.
2.
Everybody else was a silhouette.
Mhm.
So, we saw them again to close things out again. So,
Yup.
who knows? Like I said, we're a long way from Superman Legacy, and it feels like there's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of things to happen from now until then because we have two Elseworlds movies. We have the
Mhm.
Batman 2 and we
Yep.
have, Joker 2. And, I don't know if because of all the delays and we have a little writer strike going on, folks, not to be a
Mhm.
damper on things. So things might be getting delayed, you know, release dates might change. For the most part, there really isn't going to be anything major up until Superman Legacy as far as the main
Mhm.
continuity after Aquaman 2 gets released at the end of this year. So um it's going to be a lot of work. It's if you're rebuilding, because this is what
Yeah.
it is. It's a rebuild. It's not a hard reboot. At least I don't think it is. But regardless, reboot or not, it's a lot of rebuilding, and it's a lot of James Gunn and Peter Safran saying, "Okay, we're the new guys. James is up front, creative. Safran's the exec in the background here. This is our DCU." And maybe that's why we keep getting announcements, and that's why we keep getting Gunn going online saying all these
Yeah.
things, because he wants to remind fans we're doing something brand new. We're starting all over again. 2 years sounds like a long time from now, but if you could stick it out and give us a chance when it happens, we're going to deliver. And I guess that's the best we can actually hope for as we continue this farewell tour to the DCEU
Yeah.
this year with all these
Yeah.
movies coming
Listen,
out.
listen, it sounds very morbid, but the
Right.
DCEU that we had, it seems no more, man. Like
Right.
it just that version of those films and those stories, unless there's some pretty significant changes, it seems like that story for now is just over. That's what it feels
Right.
like. It feels like it's over, you know. And it is what it is. I think I agree with you. I think when it comes to Blue Beetle, I think we're looking at an origin story that will remain just that. I don't see a lot of connective tissue. I don't see them trying to do a lot of, like show. We may get some name drops. I feel like that's the easiest thing. They did that with Shazam. They would name drop Superman, name drop Wonder Woman, name drop Batman. I feel like we might get some of that. We did see a Batman name drop in the trailer. It's like, oh, it's kind of like Batman. So like they do mention Batman. So they might just do something like that. Like if there was any cameos, they might be gone. The Ben Affleck cameo for Aquaman 2 might be gone completely. Because at this point, to even keep the Ben Affleck cameo, I'm like, well, I don't, especially if he's lost. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. So it just seems like, it's a changing of the guard, and James is very vocal, and it might have a lot to do with the fact that, again, before James came on, when it was Walter Hamada and Warner Brothers, like, we were left in the dark a lot. There was a lot of times we didn't know anything that was going on, and that caused a lot of online chatter. And I feel like James wants to get away from that. James wants to show everybody, like, hey guys, you're in the know. Like, when we're working on something, you know about it. Which can be a good thing and a bad thing, because sometimes you can do a little too much. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can say a little too much. It's like, oh, pull back a little bit, and let's just wait. But at the same time, he wants us to know that they are currently working on something. You bring up a good point with the writer strike. The only thing I could see not changing, and I mean it can change, but Superman Legacy, he wrote the script and it is completed. So if he wants, he can keep the date tentatively at the moment, unless unless it keeps going. I don't know how much longer the writer strike's going to go, because if the writer strike continues when he does want to start filming, he won't be able to do any rewrites. He won't be able to make any changes. He'd have to shoot exactly what's on the paper, and that could be risky. So, we'll see. We'll see. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be some delays moving forward and whatnot and everything else. But, we got the Elseworld movies to look forward to. We'll see when those movies come out. I don't even know when the Batman 2 doesn't even have a release date yet, I don't think.
I looked it up, so it might change, but according to Google, so Aquaman 2 is gonna end this year, 2023.
Okay.
2024, right now, we have Joker, Folie à Deux. That's gonna
Mhm.
come out in October of 2024. That's what it's
Okay.
set at right now. And then the very next major release, to my understanding, is Superman Legacy, and that's
Mhm.
scheduled for July of 2025. And then the Batman Part 2, if that's remains on track, October of 2025. So,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
no release date for Batman Brave and the Bold. The assumption is 2026, possibly 2027.
Can you
So,
imagine? Can you imagine if 2025 they do the Batman, and a year later Batman Brave and the Bold? Like, you're getting two Batmans in the span
yeah,
of a year's time.
that would be odd.
It
But
would be it
but if
would
they're
be.
keeping the Elseworld stories going,
Mhm.
then that's what it is. That's what it's
Yeah.
going to be.
Yeah.
So, obviously a lot can change, and we still haven't seen Blue Beetle yet, and then Aquaman's gonna be at the end of the year. So, 3 months from now, when we have this next talk for quarter 3, chances are we're gonna have a lot more to talk about, because by then
Oh, yeah.
we will have seen Blue Beetle, and then I'm assuming by then we'll know who's playing the roles in Superman Legacy and such, and maybe some
I
more
think so.
announcements for
I
Brave
think
and the
so.
Bold as well.
I think
So,
so. I think that we're gonna get those within the next few months. And look, I'm gonna support Blue Beetle. I like Shola Maradona. I
yeah,
like him a
yeah,
lot.
man.
Listen. Again, I'm a little biased. I'm a brown man. I want to support brown people in the comic
Yeah,
book
yeah,
movies. You know what I mean? So, like, I'm like, hey man, I gotta go. I gotta support the familia. I gotta go do it. So I do want to support as much as possible. And do I think it's gonna do crazy box office numbers? I don't know. I don't
right.
know. We'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
well, they went a little lower budget for that one, so
That's very true. It's very
perhaps
true.
the expectation's not as high for that
That's
project
true.
in particular. Um, so I'm gonna end on a positive note here. If you haven't seen The Flash yet,
Mhm.
and I would say this movie is for people who share these qualities here. If you like nostalgia, actually, no, I can't because it's spoiled by now. Yeah, we already talked about it for spoiler wise. But
Mm.
so my personal thoughts as far as The Flash goes, The Flash is for people that enjoy nostalgia, for people that enjoy camp and campy superhero projects, and for people that enjoy the Flash character. Because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, it is mostly a Flash story. So
Yes.
if you like nostalgia, if you like campy, and you like Flash, this movie is for you. That's who
Yes.
I would say this movie is for.
Yes. I had a couple friends who said they were like, "This is probably the most comic booky movie I've seen in a while." And it was a very
Yeah,
interesting term. It's like comic booky. Some people said they felt like they were watching the cartoon, Justice League, on Saturday morning cartoon. And I was like, yeah, I could see that, because again, there's a lot of camp to it. I felt a lot of Back to the Future vibes, like very
yeah,
comedic in tone. And then when it needed to have heart, it could have heart. And I am happy to say that, like you said, it is a Flash story. at center, because you have Michael Keaton and you have Sasha, and you don't know how much they're going to be in the movie, but Michael Keaton is in it more than Sasha. She's in it just enough. Again, I would have liked more. Keaton gets a decent amount of fair play, but at its center, it is a Barry Allen story, and you never lose sight of that. So that is a positive to take away from it. And like you said, if you're into nostalgia and you want to hear that Tim Burton 89 Batman Danny Elfman theme play, you're gonna hear it a few times. Don't you worry. You're gonna hear it a few times. You're gonna get really excited, and it's fun to see. But yeah, so I mean, we'll see what impact it has on the DCU moving forward.
Yeah, and oh man, I didn't think we would be here. Definitely not.
Man, listen, if they would have just let my boy
Yeah.
make his 5-film arc,
The boss.
Mr. Zack Snyder,
I
if they would have
know.
just let him make his 5-film arc, we would have been rebooting the universe and doing it already. It'd have been fine. It'd have been fine. But again, I'm not going to dwell on the past. My
Right.
boy's got Rebel Moon coming out. We're moving
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, but again, I do think that when it comes to the DCEU, I do think that portion is over. Do
Yeah,
I want it to be? Of course not, but it is.
Ricardo, some would argue it's been over for years. Way
Yeah.
before we don't want to go down that road, but some
Yep.
would argue it's been over
Yep.
for years
Yep.
before the Flash came up. But after the Flash, I think it's pretty evident that they're
Yeah. It
moving
was all
forward with
right.
big
That's a wrap.
plans. So, all righty, folks. That was the Panel Bros official DC Studios Q2 2023 discussion. And please, if you could give us a like, share, and subscribe, we'd appreciate it. As always, the more subscribes we get, that helps us with our reach. Also, if you had some thoughts concerning DC Studios and how you think things are going, how you feel about things since seeing The Flash, please let us know in the comments below. And I will say this, I am still a fan of this property and these
Yeah.
characters. It's not like I'm going to skip it. And I want to see where things go. We all want to see where things go. And we've enjoyed a lot of these characters for years, but now I guess it's just time to look forward to the future. And all I can say is we just got to hope for the best. That's all we got to do.
Let's hope it's not too late.
Yeah, there we go. Little Zack Snyder's Justice League shout
Yeah.
out. Alrighty, folks. For Ricardo Segura, this is Anderson Marchak saying thank you for coming to the panel.